To order. Before we get started with the business before us, I would like to take a moment to present a Senate 20-year service award to the committee's clerk, Catherine Eden. Would you come forward, please, Catherine? Catherine came to the Senate in 2005 to serve as the scheduler for her home state senator and later served as the operations director for the Senate Committee on the Environment and Public Works. Catherine has served as the Small Business Committee's chief clerk for 10 years under the leadership of numerous chairmen and ranking members of the committee, including Senators Vitter, Cantwell, Shaheen, Rubio, Cardin, Paul, Markey, and Ernst. As a non-designated staffer of the committee, the chief clerk works for both the Republicans and the Democrats, which can be extremely challenging to navigate at times. Catherine makes being nonpartisan look easy, and we all appreciate her expertise, strong judgment, attention to detail, responsiveness, and dedication to our members, staff, and constituents. On behalf of all of the members of the committee and our staffs, I want to thank Catherine Eden for her service to the Senate. Congratulations, Catherine. Congratulations. You are very welcome. So, and Ranking Member Markey, do you have any comments?
I do have a few comments to make while you make this presentation, and that is that the Democrats join the Republicans in thanking you, Catherine, for 20 years of service, your attention to detail, your tireless work ethic, your years of experience have shaped the very way this committee operates. Nothing we do here is possible without you and your team. You represent the very best of public service, committed, capable, and always professional. And I know I speak for all of our members when I say that we are enormously grateful for your 20 years of service. It's been outstanding. We're grateful for all you've done, and we're looking forward to the years ahead. So,
great. Ranking Member,
okay, can we go? Sure.
For a photo.
Let's do that.
And we have two former chairs.
Yeah, two former chairs.
Yeah.
I'll get on the other side of you. Let me get on the other side of you here. Yep, come on in.
Come on, ladies.
They're so nice. I'm never in pictures.
Here we go.
So nice.
Good, good.
So we just tilt the top of your one forward, it's more perpendicular to the ground. There we go. All right, everyone. Hold that for me. Great. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service.
It's a real pleasure. Very nice. So thank you for pausing just for a moment as we presented that award. 20-year pins are very hard to come by here. And so, Catherine, thank you very much for your service. Today's hearing comes at a pivotal moment. America has consistently been at the forefront of technological innovation. Nonetheless, our adversaries, especially China, are working overtime to undermine us. Over the past 100 years, the United States of America has catalyzed the world's most consequential technology breakthroughs, from putting mankind on the moon to unlocking a whole new digital frontier. Americans didn't just invent, we built. We turned those big dreams into real-world breakthroughs, securing a long and prosperous period of economic might and global leadership. But after a century of wins, we cannot become complacent. Over the past 20 years, those in power in Washington have looked the other way as China initiated a comprehensive industrial espionage strategy. They're not hiding it either. The Chinese Communist Party, through its Made in China 2025 plan, has made crystal clear its goal to eliminate U.S. technological leadership in critical industries. We need to be more clear-eyed, folks. China desires nothing more than to surpass the United States technologically and militarily. They want to impose their authoritarian ideology on the world and destroy the West. If we want any shot at preserving America's leadership and warfighting capabilities, we have to lock down our innovation pipeline. The truth is, America has left its door wide open, effectively inviting our adversaries to take advantage. As a result, sensitive industries have become vulnerable to exploitation, allowing countries like China to use well-known techniques, including talent recruitment programs, to steal our innovations. The CCP forces innovators across our vibrant startup economy to hand over trade secrets and intellectual property as a cost of doing business. They invest in American firms, not to help, but to scheme, snoop, and steal. The United States Trade Representative and FBI estimate intellectual property theft by China costs our economy between $225 to $600 billion per year. The Small Business Innovation Research, or SBIR, and Small Business Technology Transfer, STTR, those programs are no exception. In 2021, the Pentagon first sounded the alarm, revealing the pervasive exploitation of the SBIR program by foreign bad actors, and recommended a foreign ties due diligence review process for applicants. That's why, through the SBIR STTR Extension Act of 2022, I fought to establish a framework to identify the extent of foreign risk, vet each company coming through the doors, and stop awarding awards to malicious actors. It was a strong start, but it isn't enough. Congress must take further action to secure the critical technologies being cultivated in these programs. In fact, my recent report on this subject showed that 64% of applications flagged for foreign risk were still eligible to receive taxpayer dollars. That's unacceptable. I ask unanimous consent to enter this report into the record. We cannot afford to keep investing taxpayer dollars to develop and deploy our best homegrown technologies while failing to safeguard them against theft by our adversaries. This is why earlier this year I introduced the Innovate Act. It would tighten our defenses, standardizing foreign ties, due diligence, and SBIR across participating agencies, and giving agencies more muscle to claw back award dollars when our national security is threatened. It's just common sense. Let me be clear. This is only a first step. The disturbing reality is that China is already conducting economic warfare in our homeland by targeting our farmland and critical infrastructure. Excuse me. If we want to win the next century and beyond, we must protect our innovators, our intellectual property, and the technologies that will shape our future. I'm looking forward to hearing from our expert witnesses today on the scale of these threats and response measures for Congress to consider. I now recognize Ranking Member Markey for his opening statement.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair, very much. From the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, Massachusetts has been at the epicenter of innovation for our country. Although I will say that I'm only here because Thomas Markey left County Armagh to go to Dover, New Hampshire, where the Industrial Revolution was raging, and ultimately moved to Lawrence, Massachusetts, where even larger plants are being built. And over the years, Massachusetts has been powered by the world's top universities, research institutions, strong public and private investments, and the best trained and brightest individuals that can be found in our country and around the world. The biggest threat to our innovation ecosystem, both in Massachusetts and across the entire country, is not coming from abroad. It is coming directly from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It is coming directly from the White House. We all agree on the importance of research, security, and protecting our technology from China's espionage. There's no doubt that American technology needs to be protected from foreign adversaries. But right now, it is President Trump himself who is killing American innovation, and China is reaping the benefits of those decisions. Over the past 7 months, President Trump has launched an all-out attack on higher education, threatening to withhold billions of dollars from universities that do not bend to the will of the administration. Proposed dismantling the Department of Education, beginning with laying off half of the department's workforce. Gutted programs, grants, and staff for research and development at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency. Slashed the National Institutes of Health budget by 40%. That's research in Alzheimer's and in diabetes and Parkinson's, cancer research, and laying off thousands and thousands of researchers. And it has gutted the National Science Foundation by 57%, and NASA by 24%. Repealed the Inflation Reduction Act for wind and solar, all-electric vehicles, battery storage technologies. China looks at us and they are saying, why are you gifting us with the clean energy future for the world and the biotech future for the world? Those are the industries of the 21st century. Why? What did we do to deserve this gift from the Trump administration? And it has also even canceled previously awarded research grants, including one to Boston Children's Hospital that was searching for a vaccine to fight all coronaviruses. And he is restricting foreign students from enrolling in universities and creating such a hostile environment that future innovators and researchers are choosing to take their talents elsewhere, including just staying in China. President Trump is taking America's crown jewel and handing it to China on a silver platter. Federal government plays an outsized role in ensuring America has a competitive edge against the rest of the world, including China, whether that be through grants, contracts, funding for universities, friendly immigration policies, or robust agency funding. In 2022, 41% of basic research in the United States was federally funded, while only 35% was funded privately. Additionally, nearly a third of this federally funded research was performed at universities. These attacks and cuts to innovation will not result in a greater, stronger, wealthier America. In fact, President Trump's proposed 22% cut in research and development funding could shrink the U.S. economy by almost 4%. The last time we saw such a setback was during the Great Recession. With China on our heels, instead of attacking universities, gutting science-based agencies, canceling research grants, and dissuading the best and the brightest from around the world from moving here, we should be doubling down to ensure that the United States can continue to lead the world in innovation. So yes, I agree with my Republican colleagues that we must protect our innovation and research that is being produced here in America. But we also must make sure that we have something to protect. And I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about the importance of investing in and protecting American innovation. And thank you, Chair Ernst, for holding this hearing.
Yes, and thank you, Ranking Member Markey. And again, my apologies to our witnesses. They have called a second vote, and because we don't have other members present, I think we will go ahead and recess. We will come back. Have you voted, Josh? You have voted. Would you rather we go ahead and do?
Going.
Okay, we'll go ahead if Senator Hawley will hand the gavel to you so we don't have to recess, and we'll have the witnesses proceed. So if you want to go ahead and vote, Ed, I'll read our introductions here so that we can start with our witnesses. I apologize. We've got a lot of votes lately. Again, I want to extend a warm welcome to all of our witnesses, and I'll go ahead with introductions of those witnesses who are testifying here today. And I'm thankful that you did take time out of your schedules to join us. First, Miss Emily de la Bruyère is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies with a focus on China policy. She is a co-founder of Horizon Advisory, a consulting firm focused on the implications of China's competitive approach to geopolitics. Emily holds affiliations with think tanks focused on national security and competition with China, including as a senior visiting fellow at the very good, okay, Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue, and as a non-resident fellow at the National Bureau of Asian Research. Ms. de la Bruyère holds a bachelor's degree from Princeton University and a master's degree from Sciences Po, Paris. Next, Dr. William Hannas did I say that right? Hannas, I want to make sure we get everyone's names right, is lead analyst and research professor at Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technology. Previously, Dr. Hannas was a member of the Senior Intelligence Service at the Central Intelligence Agency. He started his career in the United States Navy as a cryptanalyst. Say that for me. I know, okay, well, he was, a cryptanalyst. Thank you. I'm sorry, we're having a hard time today. Of foreign codes and ciphers, and later served with the Joint Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg. And thank you very much for your service to our country. Dr. Hannas holds a bachelor's degree in Chinese history from Temple University, a master's degree in Chinese from the University of Chicago, and a PhD in East Asian languages and linguistics from the University of Pennsylvania. And our minority witness today is Dr. Shivakumar. And Dr. Shivakumar directs the Renewing American Innovation Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, where he also serves as a senior fellow. Previously, he directed the Innovation Policy Forum at the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And Dr. Shivakumar holds a bachelor's degree from Carleton University and a PhD in economics from George Mason University. And thank you very much for joining us today. So we'll start with our testimonies. And in front of you, you will have a system of lights. Please press speak to speak. And that green means you're good, but once you hit that yellow button, you've got a minute left, and we need to start wrapping up. And when we hit red, your time will be expired. So, Ms. de la Bruyère, we are going to start with you. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. China is winning the technological competition against the United States. China is not winning by out-innovating the U.S. Beijing isn't besting us at the game we assume to be underfoot. Rather, the Chinese Communist Party is winning because they aren't racing. The CCP weaponizes the interdependence of the global system in order to acquire advanced technologies at low cost and low risk. Beijing then focuses its resources on the areas where it sees actual competitive advantage. First, applying those technologies, including to scale global systems and control international supply chains. And second, placing targeted, risk-adjusted bets in potentially paradigm-shifting domains where first-mover advantage actually matters. The strategy is working, and it is asymmetric. It plays perfectly to China's strengths, including of scale, centralization, and industrial capacity. China's strategy also converts core U.S. characteristics into weaknesses. Beijing is able to benefit from U.S. innovation and investment. China preys on the openness of the American system for access and its decentralization for control. The risks and the threats of this approach are particularly acute today because, and this is core to the CCP's approach, the contemporary tech revolution is transforming the global order. Modern advances in technology are creating new markets, new methods of production, and new forms of control. If China can win the tech contest, it can capture production, markets, and control. Avoiding as much requires first understanding Beijing's strategic orientation, and second, fighting back. That orientation begins with access to technology, from the academic and especially from the commercial sectors. To access commercial technology, Beijing leverages illicit means, like industrial espionage and, in China, forced data localization. But Beijing also, and in particular, takes advantage of entirely illicit means. Beijing is manipulating, not attacking, the international business environment. Government-backed, and government-guided Chinese entities go out into the international system to obtain technology through acquisitions, joint ventures, direct and indirect investment, talent programs, and personnel recruitment, and even lawsuits. Those Chinese entities benefit from government support and guidance, freeing them from market forces, and therefore allowing them to redeem strategic value from counterparts who are bound by economic logics. Alongside those go-out vectors of tech acquisition, Beijing deploys a parallel and compounding bring-in program, leveraging the appeal of the Chinese market and Chinese industrial base to attract foreign IP, research and development, data, personnel, even capital. This strategy and positioning put all U.S. technology at risk. They ensure that the U.S. approach to tech development and leadership is not only a losing one, but in fact fuels America's strategic adversary. America needs to change its game. First, the US government needs to shift from protecting American technology from China to defending the US market from China. Washington needs to impose real and rigorous restrictions on Chinese commercial entities operating in the United States or seeking to access the US market. Such restrictions should cover direct and indirect investment, joint ventures, including minority stakes, and tech licensing. They should also cover construction and deployment of information systems, components, and softwares. Those restrictions should adopt presumptions of denial. They should also adopt definitions of Chinese entities that are robust enough that China cannot circumvent them through localization and shell companies. Second, the US needs to activate its private sector to stop forfeiting critical US resources to China and to start investing in the actual competition at hand. The private sector should have to choose between the US and Chinese markets. Businesses that localize data, research and development, production in China, invest in Chinese entities, or maintain tech licensing deals with Chinese entities should not be eligible for federal procurement, defense industrial-based procurement, federal tax credits, or other incentives. Those are all sticks. At the same time, the US government needs to ensure that those companies that are opting for America and for the American market can invest, produce, and partner profitably in the United States. To do so, Washington should provide the infrastructure necessary for production, including through expanded provision of domestic energy and upstream resources, a favorable regulatory environment, and a skilled workforce. We have the chance to reclaim our core strengths and reset the playing field. America's market can serve America's interests if we protect it from China. American innovation can fuel us, not our adversary, if we direct it at the actual competitive arena. And our agility as a country can throw the deliberate, slow, centralized PRC system on its heels if we take the initiative. But all of that has to happen now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shivakumar, you are recognized for 5 minutes of testimony. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator Hawley, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored to share my views on this important topic concerning our nation's innovation strategy. Just a quick note that CSIS is a bipartisan non-profit policy research organization dedicated to advancing practical ideas to address the world's challenges with a core mission to define the future of national security. Please note that CSIS does not take any institutional policy positions, so the views represented here are my own. So as we begin our discussion today, I think it's important to keep in mind that the global strategic environment has changed fundamentally. In fact, the world's innovation landscape today is multipolar. Others can quickly grab US ideas and run with them, as my colleague has just pointed out. Competitors and rivals are also rapidly developing their own ideas and have invested in scaling them up. So there's an important fact here that we need to pick up our own pace in this global race. US innovation leadership depends critically on our own country's ability to invest in research, make new discoveries, and then bring those to the market faster and at competitive cost. So when competitive technologies aren't developed or can't reach scale because commercialization tools are underfunded, others will seize the opportunity. So this means that we must reinforce key elements of our own innovation ecosystem. A key point that I want to emphasize is that US innovation, and by extension our competitiveness and national security, depends on sustained and substantial support to our federal R&D agencies and research institutions. Importantly, it also depends on our ability to convert the results of this research into products to meet the needs of the American people. While the US remains an innovation powerhouse, it produces more IP than through our research, universities and corporations than any other country in the world. That edge is shrinking, and not least because our competitors and adversaries are advancing. Proposed cuts to our leading science agencies and research universities further erode that advantage. In the past, there were few places where inventions could be developed and rapidly commercialized. That reality has changed. So to maintain our competitive leadership and national security, we must surge investments into our domestic R&D technology, including scale-up, workforce development, advanced manufacturing, to ensure that the results of our research advantages and advantages US security and everyday Americans. My second key point is to affirm that the SBIR program is a proven national security asset and that we must continue to strategically support and expand it. As someone who's directed multiple independent assessments of SBIR at the National Academies of Science and Engineering, I confirm that the program is sound in concept and effective in practice. It enables startups and small businesses to bridge the valley of death, which is the gap between research or proof of concept and the commercial production. It allows agencies like DoD to procure cutting-edge innovations far faster than conventional programs that the Pentagon has. And SBIR has catalyzed the success of companies like Qualcomm, which have transformed our daily communications and today continues to support breakthrough technologies including drones, next-generation reconnaissance, quantum technologies, and missile propellants. At a time of intensifying technological competition, SBIR awards contribute directly to our economic growth, technological leadership, and capabilities. Our adversaries and competitors have recognized the value of SBIR program for its proven outcomes and the technological leadership it has helped secure. As Chairman Ernst pointed out in her remarks, the DoD's internal report in 2021 documented efforts by state-sponsored Chinese firms targeting DoD SBIR companies, and that merits serious attention. But let's be clear, if a competitor is stealing your playbook, it's probably because your playbook works. To be sure, steps should be taken to defend small companies against cyber attacks and foreign efforts to acquire ownership or to steal technology. But SBIR supports small businesses that often lack the tools to protect themselves from this espionage, and they're often without in-house counsel, threat intelligence, or cybersecurity teams. So we need to provide active support for their cybersecurity awareness and defense. In other words, our response should not be shut down or weaken the successful program, but in fact to fortify it. For SBIR to work, it needs to be stable and substantial and yet flexible. First, it needs long periods of reauthorization. A strong program can't thrive in a climate of fiscal and legislative uncertainty. Secondly, we should strive to avoid over-regulation. Micro-level legislative requirements on the program tend to be less effective than coordination and encouragement at the program manager level. And third, we need to strengthen and encourage the transition to commercialization. SBI helps companies cross the valley of death in phase 1 and phase 2, but in many cases, that bridge ends halfway across the valley of death. There are different paths to add an additional arch, including perhaps an active agency-financed phase 3, particularly for agencies that don't have a procurement function. So in conclusion, I just want to say that innovation without commercialization is in fact a lost opportunity. And in a world of accelerating competition, potential gifts to our adversaries. SBIR works, but it must be buttressed with cybersecurity support, flexible flow-on funding to facilitate commercialization, and programmatic stability. Most importantly, it must remain embedded within a strong ecosystem, one that is supported by sustained and substantial investment in our federal R&D agencies and research institutions. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hannas, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Chair Ernst, Ranking Member Markey, distinguished members of the committee and staff, I'm grateful for the opportunity to testify on this topic. I'm a founding member of Georgetown University's Center for Security and Emerging Technology, where I track Chinese threats, technology threats posed by China. Prior to that, I was a senior intelligence service officer at CIA managing the same portfolio. These efforts led to 2 books, one Chinese industrial espionage in 2013 and 2021 into other studies on the topic. My interest in Chinese foreign tech transfer began as a graduate student preparing a thesis on China's cultural predisposition for holistic thought, which has served China well in practical terms, but hinders progress in basic science that has plagued China since antiquity. I bring this up to emphasize that China's reliance on foreign ideas has historical roots not easily overcome. Another factor that drew me to the topic was the discovery that China treats foreign technology acquisition as an academic discipline. 科技情报学, literally S&T intelligenceology, on a par with other scientific fields replete with degree programs, how-to manuals, academic journals, and career positions supported by legislation and an army of some 100,000 S&T intelligence operatives. That's the term they use. So the notion that China's informal transfer of foreign technology is done by opportunistic individuals is pure myth. This is a state-backed, soup-to-nuts system that has been running at the central government's direction since the 1950s and is not abating even as China's indigenous accomplishments grow. It's impossible to condense volumes of research into 5 minutes, but here are the basics. China uses 3 types of transfer practices: legal, illegal, and extra-legal. Illegal transfers run from insider operations, patent infringement, reverse engineering, to the hacking and clandestine exploits we read about in the press. These tech espionage cases are so numerous that the ODNI issues 2 annual reports, one for China and one for the rest of the world. Legal transfers done through China's US-based subsidiaries, startup accelerators, targeted hires, direct and indirect investment, mergers and acquisitions, and tech-for-trade agreements are easy to spot but hard to counter because U.S. participants and oversight officials often confuse legal with in the U.S. interest. Finally, there are a dozen categories of extra-legal venues that China uses, including front organizations for deniability, paid short-term visits to state debriefing centers, overseas technical support guilds, online recruiting, and, of course, China's human talent recruitment programs. In a 1923 book on artificial intelligence, we gave examples of U.S. firms in China, including Microsoft, Intel, and IBM, working with China on AI developments and credited by the Chinese alumni of the programs as critical to China's success. In the same book, we named 10 types of venues used to effect transfers from foreign academics, such as school-to-school partnerships, co-authorship, and a practice called using foreigners to draw in foreigners. These practices threaten U.S. businesses large and small. The latter are especially vulnerable owing to a scarcity of research funds and investment capital, shrinking talent pools, fewer opportunities to commercialize breakthroughs, inadequate due diligence, and limited venues for redress. So what can be done? First, we must appreciate that the reason this is a problem at all is because our lead has shrunk to the point where theft matters, whereas before we were so far ahead it didn't matter. Rebuilding U.S. research, entrepreneurship, and productive capacity independently of whatever China is doing or stealing is the only sure way out. Meanwhile, we propose 5 common sense measures. Data on China's transfer practices should be gathered and shared with U.S. firms and academic compliance offices. 2, clear guidelines on what is legally permissible should be communicated to foreign actors contemplating research in the United States and to U.S. persons doing business in China. Members of China's overseas support guilds, talent recruitment programs, lobbying groups, and other United Front operatives should register as foreign agents. 4, recipients of U.S. government funding should report contacts with or travel to China to minimize China's ability to benefit from U.S. federal and state level investment. Finally, there are opportunities for U.S. authorities to stand China's transfer apparatus on its head by seating these venues with persons disposed to support U.S. interests. We're past the point where this problem can be ignored. The gap between tech breakthroughs and consequences is measured now in weeks, which puts a premium on keeping what we invent. Thank you for this opportunity to address this issue.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and we will now go into our question and answer period, and each member will have 5 minutes. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. And Ms. Bruyère, let's start with you. I was a proud leader in the creation of a new foreign ties due diligence process for SBIR in 2022. My Innovate Act would create a clear and consistent definition of foreign risk to improve agencies' analysis of adversarial threats. Which methods does China most commonly use to exploit technology of innovative startups, and how can we best restrict the flow of those taxpayer dollars to compromised entities?
Thank you for that question. I obviously can't answer without first prefacing that China has an immense arsenal and it's adaptive. So when we put up protections, China tends to find or try to find ways around them. That said, common methods include first investment. including both directly via Chinese companies and funds and indirectly as, for example, limited partners in U.S. funds. Second, China uses both customer and supply relationships, as well as the information sharing that those create, and personnel, including, as have been mentioned, talent programs, talent poaching, and embedding of personnel. Protecting against this requires top-down measures from Washington and also expectations put on companies that are receiving federal funding. From the top down, general U.S. restrictions on Chinese investment and presence in the U.S. should be strengthened. For instance, CFIUS should be strengthened to respond to China's indirect investment methods as well as directed ones. But also, federal funding mechanisms like the SBIR program should include due diligence requirements. And those due diligence requirements have to be best in class, and they have to be updated for the realities of China's adaptive and indirect ways or means. It's not enough to say what's first-level ownership or what are direct investments coming into a funded entity. It's also not enough to say just what are its first-tier customers. Due diligence has to look at the indirect investments. It has to look, for instance, at customer as well as tiered down suppliers. And due diligence processes have to be adaptive or proactive so that they're looking at what China's going to be doing next, not what it's already doing. These should be the case. They're largely not in the due diligence approaches and ecosystems that exist, so that has to change. And then also from the bottom up, companies that are receiving federal funding should be expected to be doing and refreshing their due diligence throughout their lifespans. So that should include looking at who they're taking money for and really vetting that for Chinese ties, who they're supplying to, who their customers are, who their partners are. There should be no entity, whether a research university or a two-person startup in a garage that's getting U.S. federal funding that's also partnering with Chinese entities. And that should be fundamental, and the penalties should include clawbacks because there has to be an actual risk in there.
No, thank you. And that was very good. A lot of solutions just in that one answer. So I appreciate that. Dr. Hannas, in your testimony, you discuss how U.S. oversight officials often confuse legal with in the U.S. interest. Can you elaborate further on how to get our federal officials to stop awarding taxpayer-funded grants and contracts to companies that have clear ties to CCP espionage?
Simply said, but hard to implement. You need data and access to the data. Let me share a war story. Some years ago, I was part of a team reviewing bids of a large U.S. government contract. We had necked down some 200 bidders to a dozen and rank ordered them. And by pure chance, I noticed that one of the companies, which was in the top rung, was pitching a professor at a U.S. engineering college, whom I remembered as a China Talent Program member, who wrote software for China's bio industry. So we drew the money line just above that company. This is not the way to operate. The event should have happened by design, not luck. It's entirely possible for the U.S. government to build detailed lists of persons and venues affiliated with China's technology transfer programs against which grant proposals can be vetted. In fact, we spearheaded a pilot a few years ago that enjoyed some success, but access was restricted, it was limited, which didn't do corporate America much good.
And thank you for that. It's a clear demonstration of why my Innovate Act strengthens the denial authority and provides clarity to our program managers that they can't move forward with awards if there are clear threats out there. So I really do appreciate it. We will go next to a ranking member, Markey, for his questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Shivakumar, as you know, the Small Business Innovation Research and the Small Business Technology Transfer programs will expire in just over 2 months. And these programs have played an essential role in driving our country's innovation, resulting in at least 70,000 patents and 700 public companies. Since its inception in 1982, the program has resulted in more than 207,000 awards, totaling more than $72 billion. And you are one of the few researchers who has done extensive analysis of these programs. So could you speak, Doctor, to how multiple award winners are important to the growth of certain industries? And could you provide an example of a technology that would not exist without multiple award winners?
Certainly. Well, I was just last month in Colorado looking at the emergence of a quantum innovation cluster in the Mountain West region. There are a number of SBIR companies among those, and they're a limited number. So if you think about the need to actually grow our quantum industry, and if you think of the particular solicitations, there are only going to be a limited number of these companies that can respond to any particular solicitation. So the idea of those companies will by nature need to garner multiple awards in order to build scale and to grow the industry in that region. So it's not just there are concerns about whether there's a problem with multiple award winners, people coming, gaming the system. There are cases to be made where multiple award winners are actually important to our national security. If we need to build up our quantum industry, for example. On the other hand, we have program managers at the various agencies who are best positioned to actually monitor any abuse of the program by gaming the system to get multiple awards. My recommendation is not for this for the Senate or the Congress to sort of manage the program from here, but provide the program managers the resources and the confidence to actually manage their programs. If there are problems, let them document the award if they are going to give the award.
Could you speak to the impact of the 2022 due diligence program in protecting our SBIR and STTR programs?
So I think there is obviously an important aspect in protecting our IP. But there is also the consideration that it's a global race now in terms of innovation. There are multiple countries in the world, including China, that have strong innovation systems. And as the old football saying, you can't win purely on defense. You need a very strong offense, which means that we need to supercharge our innovation system, by making sure that our universities churn out, our research institutions churn out new ideas, by making sure that programs like SBIR take those ideas and bring them into businesses, build prototypes, get them ready for the market, and then to scale those technologies further up so that we can be competitive internationally while also creating new opportunities for Americans. So it's yes, we need to defend, but I think we need to look at both sides of that equation as well. We need to have a strong offense in terms of a very vibrant innovation system.
Yeah, and that strong offense would be not cutting the National Institutes of Health, not cutting investment in batteries and solar and wind, not cutting investment in the National Science Foundation, investing in our young people to compete. Here's a headline from just last week. China puts new restrictions on EV battery manufacturing technology. Okay. Now that they've made the breakthrough, now that there are companies like BYD, Build Your Dreams, are way ahead of Ford and General Motors and way ahead of Tesla, they're now going to put restrictions on the transfer of any of their battery technology around the world. And they invited us in, but their condition was we have to share our technology with them. Now that they're sprinting ahead, they're going to put restrictions on. So it looks like they were playing us for Uncle Sucker the whole way, and we just have to be realistic about it. But the way to respond is not to cut our research in these critical areas. There's going to be 20 million all-electric vehicles sold around the world this year. We only sell 17 million total vehicles in the United States each year. And so we're seeding the future, and basically what China is doing is putting up the walls to protect not just against us, but anyone else now being able to compete effectively with them in the marketplace. And we just have to be ruthlessly realistic about that reality. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ranking Member. And Senator Curtis, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really proud to represent Utah. Like some of my colleagues, Utah represents 99% small businesses. This is just a really important committee and topic. It's the lifeblood of our state. Utah's a major entrepreneurial hub for innovation as well. A lot of our businesses have seen their intellectual property stolen, and Chinese entities frequently copycat their products. They see them on places like Kenmu and other things like that. I'm actually convinced that our small businesses have a disproportionate burden here because they don't have compliance officers, they don't have layers of lawyers and accountants. So I guess my question for all three of you is, how vulnerable are our startups, specifically to these Chinese espionage, and are there specific industries that are more at risk? Please.
The short answer is highly vulnerable, and not only because of the resource constraints that small businesses face, but also because of the dearth of resource constraints that Chinese entities face. The way Beijing positions in the international commercial ecosystem is to a state-led, enterprise-driven approach where Chinese agents, companies go out, they have state backing in the direction, and that means that they're not bound by market forces, which lets them reap strategic advantage off of entities that are bound by economic logics, especially those like small businesses that have serious resource constraints. And ways that Beijing does this include targeting distressed companies, companies on the verge of or after bankruptcy, ones that really need to raise investment rounds and will take investment from anyone that's willing to give them money, in short, that have strategic value but aren't necessarily on a commercial trajectory or one that gives them the freedom to choose between long-term strategic interests for them or the country and Beijing. And that's a massive difficulty, and you can't solve that without having restrictions on China's role and the role of Chinese entities in the U.S. system.
Thank you.
So I made some notes on that point, and yes, indeed, they are especially vulnerable to small businesses for a number of reasons. One being the scarcity of research funds and investment capital. So it's not available here, so they look at China, even if they don't know they're looking at China. Shrinking talent pools, ditto. Plenty of talent available through China's diaspora community, but less and less within the indigenous American population. Fewer opportunities to commercialize breakthroughs, that's big. They have discoveries, how do they bring it to market? Not easily done. And it was pointed out, inadequate due diligence. They don't have the wherewithal to determine who are friendlies and who are not. And finally, limited venues for redress. You discover something that you're an agreed party to an agreement, and what do you do about it? Very little you can do about it as a small business. So yeah, they are very vulnerable.
The FBI said that China is, quote, the world's principal infringer of intellectual property, and that it uses laws and regulations to put foreign companies at a disadvantage and its own companies at an advantage. Earlier this year, I introduced the Combating China's Pilfering of Intellectual Property, CCP-IP Act, which holds China accountable for stealing American ideas. This bill would enforce sanctions and visa restrictions on Chinese officials and citizens engaged in intellectual property. Can any of you walk us through how intellectual property theft transfers into long-term economic or national security losses for the United States? Go ahead, yeah.
I think to answer that question, you fundamentally go back to what China is trying to do with intellectual property. Beijing's not just developing cutting-edge technology. Beijing is stealing cutting-edge technology and then focusing on its applications, so the commercial and the industrial returns that come from that. And Beijing's doing that for two primary objectives. One is to control international supply chains. If you control batteries were mentioned, for instance, the global battery market, you control automobiles. And also, you make sure that the U.S. depends on you, which gives you leverage in economic and geopolitical environments. And second, perhaps most importantly, offensively, Beijing's working to build and to scale the global infrastructure for a new technological environment. In information technology, for instance, a unified information network that collects all data and transmits all data. And if Beijing is able to do that, and it's directly applying technology to this end, then Beijing can control how markets work, how militaries work, how people perceive.
Thank you. I'm sadly out of time. Appreciate your expertise, and I yield back.
Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to each of our witnesses for your testimony today. I have to say I agree with the premise that each of you have outlined about the threat that China poses to our innovation and the importance of the SBIR program and reauthorizing it in ensuring that we continue to innovate. I want to point out that last week, the minority on the Foreign Relations Committee issued a report on China that talks about the threat from China and the decisions that have been made in the first 6 months of this administration that cede America's leadership in a whole range of issues. And one of the report's findings highlighted how America's withdrawal from international organizations cedes influence to China, which has in response has increased its contributions and personnel across a whole range of international bodies. And by proposing a near zeroing out of U.S. contributions to international organizations like the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, the administration risks allowing China to be the dominant voice in international discussions about the future of IP protections, including patents, copyrights, and trademarks. So I would ask each of you how America's small businesses benefit from participation in international bodies like the World Intellectual Property Organization. One of my favorite statistics about small businesses is that they create 16 times more patents than large businesses. So what happens around the IP protections that you all have outlined is critical. So why is it important that the United States participate in those kinds of bodies that provide those protections for our small businesses?
Said that the country that controls standards and patents controls the world, and they understand that very well. And they have a national strategy, a 2035 strategy, to be a world leader in setting the standards. If you think about standards, in many respects they're like language. They set the grammar, they set the vocabulary, the idiom, and the country that sets, is in control of the language, controls the dialogue, controls the thought, controls the innovation in the sphere. So it's extremely important that the United States, which has long dominated the standard setting, environment, the institutions, sort of wake up and reassert itself. It's sort of, we have been in the lead for so long, like the proverbial story of the rabbit and the hare, we have sort of taken a nap. And so, the relevant agencies need to be, prodded, hopefully from here, and to sort of take a leadership and make sure that we are ably represented, that the people who are in these standard-setting organizations are trained, and that we take a much more active, proactive role in the IP. We have a very strong still in our innovation system research IP. We're an IP machine in many ways, but we need to also have a standards, part of that equation to make sure that our ideas are dominant and that we have that advantage of being the standard setters.
So if we don't pay our dues to WIPO by the end of this year, we run the risk of not being able to participate again. And what kind of a disadvantage does that put the United States businesses in if that happens?
Well, if somebody else is writing the rules by which you have to play, that certainly puts you at a disadvantage. So that's not a situation where you want to be.
Thank you. Yes,
if I may add, I think one of the underestimated risks of China's approach is that Beijing has co-opted international organizations, including and especially standard-setting organizations and intellectual property organizations. And Beijing does so with the benefits of its centralization and scale that means that even an activated U.S. approach to those organizations doesn't have any hope. China floods the ITU with members who are paid, they've pre-decided what standards they're going to form, which means that just by engaging in these standards, the U.S. is, in these organizations, the U.S. will be at a disadvantage. So the hope that the U.S. can claim is by extracting China from a system that has manipulated and restoring its integrity such that activities go in a way that follows their actual rules and intent.
But if we're not at the table, how are we going to extract China and how are we going to hope to compete if we're not even there?
We need to establish organizations that don't have China in them, or find ways
But
like...
again, how do we do that if we're not there to address the rules of those organizations and to establish that ability to make sure that China doesn't participate?
You don't have to be part of an organization to launch a new one.
Are we in the process of doing that?
I think that the most strategically significant move with international organizations the U.S. could make right now would be to revoke China's permanent normal trade relation status. It's a World Trade Organization move, not a WIPO.
Oh, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I think that is not a bad move, and we
And then
should
you
think
could
about
have
that.
trickle-down effects throughout other organizations that Beijing has co-opted.
Very good, thank you. That'll be our next project, so thank you. I recognize Senator Young for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. As Chairman of the National Security Council on Emerging Biotechnology, I have dedicated a significant amount of effort on the topic of making sure that we have a vibrant small business sector that can commercialize the many innovations we make in this country. And one of the key recommendations we have in that report is the urgent need to mobilize the private sector by enhancing the reach and the effectiveness of the small business innovation research and small business technology transfer programs. These programs are essential for advancing early-stage innovation and scaling U.S. technologies. They are proven. They have been bipartisan, but we think they certainly can be improved. Mr. Hannas, you've been closely involved with the NSCEB. Thank you for your assistance. You helped us shape recommendations. From your perspective, how critical is it that we emphasize and incentivize the commercialization of emerging technologies? Just touch again on that, but as importantly, how might your recommendation to make China's United Front operatives register as foreign agents help advance that cause?
So, the first point, yeah, I mean, this is where China excels in commercializing technology. They never set the world on fire in coming up with abstract indigenous theoretical discoveries, but what they do exceptionally well is commercialize what anybody in the world finds. We seem to have exported or lost that ability to commercialize, and there was a time when we could get along okay with royalties from patents for inventions that we created, but those days are gone. You need to commercialize. And here we might draw a lesson for once from China, something they're doing. I was kind of shocked to discover a few years ago that they have what are called commercialization centers, which are anything from a storefront with two people in it to acres wide and stories tall complexes that exist solely for the purpose of commercializing technology, both foreign and indigenous. They don't discriminate. If it's technology, they'll commercialize it, getting it to market and or weaponizing it, before anybody else does. I don't know that we have anything like that, and I think we might be able to learn a lesson from that. And your second question, Senator?
If you could very briefly, because I have limited time, but just touch on your recommendation pertaining to making China's United Front operatives register as foreign agents.
Well, clearly they are. No one's held their feet to the fire to this extent. And again, it goes back to data. We need to understand, what groups of people are involved. We already do understand that at a certain level, but we need to get this information into a database where it's scrutinized and made available to other people who can make these analytic judgments and execute these decisions that we make in determining, who are actually China's unpaid actors,
Sure.
China's influence operators. It's not done. It's done. It's hit and miss.
It seems to me a sports analogy is applicable here. A good defense is also a good offense, right? In this case, if we cut down on the theft of intellectual property, we leave it to our own market, our own investors and entrepreneurs, if we up our game with respect to commercialization, to deploy, whatever business model they think appropriate to take advantage of those breakthroughs, creates jobs and prosperity and helps our national security. So I think the two are very much linked. Ms. Della Bruyère, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. How can we better ensure sustained U.S. leadership in the development and deployment of emerging tech through your proposal to prohibit certain businesses from eligibility for federal procurement if they run afoul of any of the proscriptions that you suggest, data research, procurement localization, investment in Chinese entities? How would that work?
That starts with defense, right? Part of that is then we're trying to defend our technology from China's access.
Yes.
Perhaps more important than that, because fundamentally defense will only work so well against China, is that moves like that send a message to the private sector. And they tell the private sector that you have to make a choice between the U.S. market and between China. And also that you can profit from investing in America, and investment in the U.S. and countering of China can be a profitable thesis. The U.S.'s greatest strength is our private sector, but that has to be what's activated for the contest against China. We can't just have the government impose restrictions and think that that will work. So moves that force a choice and make U.S. government support contingent on a competitive approach to China send a signal to the private sector.
Thank you. I'm out of time. Dr. Shivakumar, good to see you. I've enjoyed our work together. Chair?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Young. Senator Justice, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member and all these wonderful witnesses. And I'm not going to attempt to butcher your last names. No, there's no way. So for me, we're going to go with Emily, Doc 1, Doc 2. Okay. So let me just start off by making a little bit of a statement, because I've got a lot of white hair. I'm a new kid on the block. You know, really, I came here for the right reasons, and period. I don't want anything. I don't want a thing in the world for me. But with all that being said, I can't, for the life of me, understand why all the smarts around this table, all the smarts here, all the smarts back there, why we can't just realize where we are. I mean, we have known forever and a day what China's doing, and we haven't done anything about it. And America believes that no matter what in the world happens, and I'm a believer too, no matter what in the world happens, it's all going to be great, and we can go to Wendy's and get baby dog chicken nuggets this afternoon. We know we can. But now just think about this just for a second, and let me just take you back just in time. Jimmy Carter was the president. We'd given away the Panama Canal. We had interest rates and inflation rates at levels that nobody could ever fathom. We had gasoline lines. We had 100 hostages in Iran. The Soviet Union was running so strong it was unbelievable. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of us were afraid. At that point in time, who could have ever dreamed that the Soviet Union could stumble? And then all of a sudden we elected Ronald Reagan, and just in a very, very, very short period, almost no time, Ronald Reagan was standing in front of the Berlin Wall saying, "Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And the Soviet Union collapsed. Why do we not believe and move with the light speed that we should be moving with, that it could happen to us? And it can. We're right on the cusp right now of needing energy like you can't imagine. Absolutely, we're going to have to decide between homes and industry. We are, if we don't really get moving. Now, so why in the world does the smarts of this room that is unbelievable not solve the problem? We've got to solve the problem. I mean, for God's sakes, a living. I mean, if in you know, Madam Chairman's home state, if people are out digging up seeds and stealing our technology of how we grow these phenomenal crops that yield beyond belief, and I'm a farmer too, you know, I mean, what will they not do? What in the world will they not do? So all I can say to you is just this, is to the small business folks, and my only question would be just this, that's already been asked 14 times. How do you protect them? They don't have a host of accountants or lawyers or whatever it may be, or advisors. How do you protect them? And literally, for all of us, a lot of y'all are really young and don't have white hair, but it'll probably happen to you sometime. I was skinny and had brown hair for a long time. And now look. But anyway, all that being said, absolutely, we have got to solve the problem. We got to solve the problem right now. How do you protect the small businesses? Let's go with Emily, Doc 1, Doc 2. Go very quickly. I've only got a minute, and I've said exactly how I feel. But at the end of the day, come on, guys. Come on, all of us. All of us got to pull the rope together. We have everything at stake. It's not time to be Democrats and Republicans. It's time for all of us to pull this rope together. Emily, please.
We remove China from our market, and we incentivize companies to invest in making. We remove China from our market, and we incentivize companies not just to develop research, but to produce.
Doc 1.
So the SBIR is a huge asset that we have to accelerate technologies using our small businesses. We need to arm them with the wherewithal, the resources to inoculate themselves and to be aware so that they're not susceptible to this sort of theft.
Doc 2.
You level the playing field so China can't continue to do what it has been doing.
100% right. Madam Chair, I defer my 5 seconds. I'm over time.
Thank you, Senator Justice. And thanks for bringing up the Chinese theft of seeds in Iowa that happened in 2013, I believe, and they were sentenced in 2016. But yes, it does happen. They steal our intellectual property and reverse engineer. So we will next go to Senator Husted for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the witnesses for joining us today. Complicated issue. It seems, in listening to you and from the work that I've done in my life, it seems like we've got a situation where our freedom is being used against us. We allow Chinese students to study in our universities many times, not many times, but sometimes, to our detriment, stealing intellectual property, our ideas, outright espionage. Anytime a small business sells into the Chinese market, I don't know how many times I've talked to a small business, said, look, I was selling it. Next thing I know, they're selling it. They stole my IP. I have no recourse in their courts. We have recourse they have recourse, though, in our courts. We treat them, we give their businesses the same protections we give our businesses, but yet that's not reciprocated. Not to mention, some of their advances clearly have also come from stealing technologies in other nations, from other innovations that go there. And I know in talking to small businesses since the tariff issue has come up, that they say, well, a lot of times they say, well, I don't necessarily like them. However, how in the world, it's about time somebody stands up and protects me from what's going on when I try to sell into China and what they sell into our country and other countries. I'll ask each of you to comment on that. What recommendations would you make to the Trump administration as they're looking at the issue of trade with China, and how can we use our trade relationship or the bilateral conversations that are happening to address some of the issues you've discussed today? Dr. Hannas, you can start with you and go down the line.
Again, my apologies, I'm not good at solutions, but there is one point that needs to be brought up that is germane, I think, to your question, and we didn't touch on it enough before. This is not solely a U.S. problem. You know, China does not discriminate among the countries that it exploits. Our book on Chinese industrial espionage, was translated into 2 languages. Guess which 2? Japanese and Korean, because they're suffering the same problems we are. So one of the things we can do is ally ourselves with our allies who are suffering from the same depredations and come up with a common front against the problem. That would be my major recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
One of the challenges that we have in our innovation system is that a fantastic entrepreneurial culture, but the scale-up part of our innovation system, infrastructure is it has eroded over a number of years. We need to rebuild that so that we are the ones who are first and foremost absorbing the IP that's coming out of our research universities faster than anybody else in the world. And
what do you think the barriers are to that? Because we have a lot of capital in this country. What is the barrier? Why aren't we scaling it up?
Well, it's a sort of more time I can come back and brief you in detail. But we have basically hollowed out our manufacturing sector. So as a result, our ecosystem is incomplete. The Chinese have large state-owned enterprises. They have deep pockets. They're able to take ideas and scale them up. And we don't have, we are kind of weak in that area. So what we need to do is actually rebuild our innovation system so that it's the most competitive in the world. Go back to when it was.
It's very capital intensive.
It's very capital intensive. It requires a lot of coordination across. It requires a strong, it's a multifaceted innovation system. It has, worker training aspects to it. It has, capital markets aspect to it. It has research and development aspects to it. All of these parts of the innovation system have to all work together independently as well as connect with each other. In fact, one of the advantages of the SBIR program is actually it takes ideas that may be formed at a university lab, but the venture capitalist doesn't know whether it's a great idea. And so by creating a two-phase validation of the commercial potential and the technological potential of the technology, it basically flags to venture capitalists, our deep capital markets, that this is an idea that you need to invest in. That helps to bring the technology pathway across.
Well, our financial system's like sure bets, not speculative.
Well,
bets.
the financial system, it's a market, and like any market, it works well when there's more information, and this is what SBIR does.
Give a chance for our last guest.
I'll be sure. On the trade front, we need to stop assuming that China is going to play by the rules or will ever compromise. And we should levy significantly higher tariffs on China. We should encourage our allies and partners to do the same, but with a coherent message that says that the international free trade system works. We should all be part of it, but not let China abuse it. And then we should accept that a message to the American people that all of this will come at a cost in the short term, but that cost is far more palatable than the long-term cost of not defending against China's manipulation.
So thank you. And Madam Chair, the three things, that I heard from the answer: work with our partners, Japan, Korea, others who are experiencing the same problem, help Made in America work by reestablishing our manufacturing base in this country, and use tariffs against China as a tool to help get this accomplished. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I think this has been a very good hearing and a lot of good suggestions coming from our witnesses as well. So I am grateful for the recent positive coverage that my Innovate Act has gotten from a number of people, including from the CSIS scholars, including provisions to draw in new entrants and focus on SBIR funding on companies that successfully scale innovations to market for private or government end users. And I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article by Philip Singerman, Senior Advisor with Renewing American Innovation at CSIS. Not my favorite picture, but we'll have that entered into the record. So without objection, so ordered. And Ranking Member Markey, did you have closing comments?
Well, if I may, I just have a couple of more questions, if I may. And
yes, you may.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, President Trump has single-handedly decimated our innovation ecosystem. As one professor has noted, over the last few months, an elaborate plan to ensure that China prevails in our global economic competition has taken shape. The plan's chief architects, however, are not China's leaders. They are U.S. politicians. And the professor goes on to say, the Trump administration's cuts to federal agencies are undermining the United States' ability to innovate. Hostile immigration policies are making it harder for U.S. firms, industries, universities to attract the best ideas and talents. Wild threats of tariffs and restrictions on foreign supply chains are terrifying investors. President Trump has created the perfect storm to destroy our competitive edge. So, Dr. Shivakumar, how will gutting our innovation ecosystem benefit China?
Well, it'll benefit China by taking us out of the race, clearly. But I think what we need to do is to actually supercharge our innovation system by reinforcing all the things that do work and fixing the things that don't. There are a number of connection points, and our research system is something that we have been investing in for decades now. And it's a legacy system, and it requires reform. But at the same time, you reform it, you don't destroy it. It's an important facet of our innovation system. It requires care and renovation and resources.
Yep. So over the Boston Public Library, it says, the education of its people is the best defense of a nation. And that's been a bipartisan agreement that Democrats and Republicans have had over generations, that it benefits our national security, it benefits our innovation culture. And in 1957, President Eisenhower enacted the National Defense Education Act. Sputnik was up in the air giving us an electronic finger from outer space. You're behind. You're behind. We're ahead of you. So I went to college on a national defense student loan, as did millions of other kids. We got to get in this race. We got to educate people, because President Eisenhower recognized that the only way the United States was going to win the space race and protect our national security was to invest in education, invest in those institutions, provide financial assistance to students. Now, in 2025, President Trump is doing the exact opposite, taking a sledgehammer to our world-renowned innovation ecosystem, dismantling our education system, and undermining America's competitive edge. And these impacts will be felt for generations to come. As one researcher said, if this continues, we are going to lose a generation of scientists. So, Dr. Shivakumar, what impact will President Trump's attacks have on American innovation, our national security, our ability to attract the best and the brightest?
Well, I think you have described what the impacts will be. So I would agree with you. It's our innovation system is tightly coupled with our research and development system, and attacks on, and if you undermine that research and development part of our ecosystem, you slow down all the other parts of it as well. So this is going to be a long-lasting negative impact if in fact the proposed cuts to NSF and so forth do take place. But this is what the president has proposed. I think it's for the president to propose, for Congress to dispose. So I'm hopeful.
Yep. So I've been in Congress for a while. Mm-hmm. I did not vote for most favored nation status for China. I was always very suspicious of them, especially after I went to China and I could see how they were stealing our intellectual property. When in the year 2000 there was a vote on making it permanent, normal trade relations, there's nothing normal about trade relations with China. I voted no each time. But there was a bipartisan consensus, Democrat and Republican presidents, Democrat and Republican leaders in the House and Senate. I was in the vast minority saying, no, we're going to be handing over our intellectual property. But they wanted to play, they were smart people thinking big strategic thoughts. They wanted to play the China card. And when we ultimately turned over the card, it was a deuce. We didn't get anything in return. They didn't help us strategically, they just helped themselves economically. And now that they have the lead, they're putting up barriers. They have a battery that can recharge for 5 minutes and the car goes 400 miles. They're not going to allow that to come to the United States for manufacturing, because they are now going to actually finish off this plan which they had to take advantage of us, and then in turn have us not be able to compete with them on all of these key innovation technologies. That's why SBIR is so important. That's why all of the investment that we make in innovation and R&D is just so critical. And we're just, unfortunately, increasingly just leaving the playing field. And China, I'm sure, is in a state of shock that we're doing it not receiving anything in return from the Chinese as a reciprocal concession that is made to us. I thank you, Madam Chair. I just think this is such an important area for all of us to be able to focus on.
Thank you, Ranking Member Markey, and thank you to our witnesses for your insight today to inform this discussion. Obviously, we all care very, very much about this issue. Our response to China's targeted exploitation of American innovators is of critical importance for America's competitiveness in the years to come. To maintain our edge, we have to do two things: ensure taxpayer dollars are invested in the best and the brightest innovators with a plan to scale ideas from lab to market or to our war fighters. That's very important. And number two, eliminate loopholes by which CCP compromised firms gain funding. And I do want to be very clear here. There is a difference between companies who have won a handful of SBIR awards versus SBIR mills with hundreds of awards over 40 years in the program. While it is a positive step that we have the foreign ties due diligence program in place, this data has revealed a concerning reality. 6 of the 25 largest recipients of SBIR awards at the Department of Defense have clear links to China and still received nearly $180 million from the Pentagon in 2023 and 2024. And that was after the implementation of foreign ties due diligence. Rather than focus on funding on a select, very select, few well-connected companies who pursue joint ventures and other business ventures with China, my Innovate Act would target funding on firms looking to build and commercialize technology here for the benefit of Americans. I will continue to shine a light on this issue and work towards reforms. And with that, I will remind...
If I may.
You had 5 minutes, Ranking Member Markey. And I would also ask that if anybody would like to take a look at the information, my report is on our Senate Small Business Committee website. You can go to the Republican tab, go under press releases, and you may read it for yourselves. So
May I
we
make
have
a
that.
unanimous consent
Yes.
request? Yeah, I make a unanimous consent request that the Independent Government Accountability Office evaluation of the due diligence program that focuses on the Small Business Innovation Program and the Small Business Technology Transfer Program that found that all 11 agencies have successfully implemented the due diligence program, and I congratulate you on that, in 2022, continues to be successful. They're working, and they've identified the potential foreign risks, and they've addressed them. And I would just like to put that report in the record.
Without
So
objection.
that all of that information is made available.
And with that, I want to thank our witnesses for being here with us today. I ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open for 2 weeks for members to submit questions, revise and extend their remarks, and submit additional information into the record, and without objection, so ordered. And again, we want to thank our witnesses for being here today, and obviously an issue of great, great importance to all of us. And with that, the Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship stands adjourned.